So when our kids get to the ages where they're having friends, sometimes those friends can be seen as threats to maybe my relationship with my child,
Sure.
or just the threat of their influence on my child.
Yeah.
But I think we could flip that and see those as opportunities for training our kids to be a great friend and look for and what to look for in great friends.
Completely agree with that. Let's get into that right now.
Hey, I'm Andrea Warnock.
I'm Nathan Warnock.
And you've joined us for Family Friday on the Marriage by Design podcast.
That's
and
right.
This is a time where we get to talk to you about all things family and how that relates to the Bible.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So what are we talking about today, babe?
So today we're talking about friendships with our kids, how we can cultivate friendships with our kids and teach our kids to be great friends and what to look for in great friends as well.
Yeah, that's great. So we are specifically thinking about this today from the standpoint of our role as parents teaching our kids.
Yeah.
Right? So this isn't necessarily like a, hey, this is how to be a good friend, although we will talk about some of those things in the course of this. This is really focused on this part of parenting, this mission of parenting that we have to teach our kids how to be a good friend, and maybe the more intimidating thing for us as parents, how do we get our kids to choose quality friends to hang around with?
Yep.
That's what we're going to talk about.
Right.
So go ahead. I would say we're dividing this kind of into four different things. We're going to talk first about teaching friendship. Then we're going to talk about training for friendship, investing in friendship, and then sort of reflecting on our friendships. Mm-hmm. That's what we're going to do today. So
yeah, let's get first into the teaching friendship part.
Sure.
So we see friendship all throughout the Bible.
No doubt.
And on this podcast, we want to be all about the Bible. So we thought we'd start with great examples from the Word and what the Bible has to say about friendship. So Genesis 2:18 talks about, then the Lord God said, "It's not good that man should be alone. I will make him a helper fit for him."
That's right. Yeah, I mean, we think of that as a marriage verse, and it is a marriage verse because the Lord then creates Eve. But the first part of that's not necessarily a marriage statement.
Right.
It's God speaking to that council around him up in heaven, saying it's not good that man should be alone.
Right. We're created for community.
That's exactly right.
So we're created for relationship.
That's exactly right. That's right. So what are some other biblical examples?
So then we see quite a few. Moses and Aaron is a great example. So Moses was a guy who was born at a time where actually the male babies were being killed.
Yep.
And he was saved miraculously and ended up being adopted into the Pharaoh's household.
Yep.
And being really kind of the Pharaoh's adopted grandchild. So he grew up in the Pharaoh's house, but was called back to save the Israelite people from slavery.
Right.
And so God used him in an amazing way. And he also had Aaron with him as well. So God called Moses to save the Israelite people, but Moses really felt like he was not equipped to do that.
Right.
So he said, I don't speak well. I can't do this. And so God gave him Aaron, and they really were kind of the duo that helped to save the Israelite people and worked together very closely and had a very close bond.
That's right. Now you might be sitting there going, now, hold on a second. You're saying Moses and Aaron as a picture of friendship, but wasn't Aaron Moses' brother?
Well,
and the answer to that is yes, he was. But we're actually going to talk a little bit later on about in this episode that those things aren't exclusive.
Right. And we see plenty of examples in everyday life where you have a sibling that you're not close with. So siblings don't always mean friendships.
Right, but hopefully they will in your family,
right,
and in ours.
Yeah, and for Moses and Aaron, it was a sibling relationship, yes, but even deeper than that, it was a very close friendship as well.
Yeah.
So then we see David and Jonathan as well. Jonathan was the son of King Saul, and David had been. So then, naturally, if Jonathan was the son of King Saul, he would have been in line to be king, right?
Yeah.
But God said, no, David's going to be king, and so David was a threat to Saul.
Right.
But Jonathan and David were very, very close friends. And Jonathan actually helped to save David's life, knowing that David's going to become king and not me.
Right.
And it's an amazing story and a very, very deep friendship that we see in the Word.
Yeah, that one's for Old Testament. When we think of friendship, that's really the one that we keep coming back to, that really intimate friendship. And it was certainly an intimate friendship.
Yep.
Ultimately, tragically, Saul's disobedience ended up costing him and Jonathan their lives. But that relationship was a close one. The next one that I thought of as I was thinking about this, is in the book of Daniel. And we read about Daniel and Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego.
Shack, and Benny.
That's right, if you're into VeggieTales. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego kind of have their own little story where they get cast into a fiery furnace and yet are not burned up. And Daniel, of course, we think of Daniel as in Daniel in the lion's den. But there's an earlier story when Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego first get captured from Israel and brought in to Babylon, and what we see is that they're brought. Basically, Babylon went through and picked. Okay, who are the most fit, most intellectual people that we've captured? Let's bring them into the household of the king, and we'll train them up to be, men of valor here in Babylon. That was kind of how Babylon worked. Is they'd go out and capture people, and then they would take the very best, and they would fold them into Babylon society in an effort to make Babylon great, and it worked, for years and years. So basically, what the problem was that the thing that they were serving them to eat was not kosher food, right? It was not food that the Lord had said, "Hey, this is okay for you to eat." It was meats that were not allowed to be eaten. It was things that were used in idolatry, those types of things. And so Daniel and his friends went to them and said, "Well, we don't want to do this because it violates what we believe. Would you be willing to feed us vegetables and water instead?" And there was a back and forth, and you have to check it out in Daniel to see how that ends. But our point in putting that in here was that friendship, I think, that mutual, you've ever been in a situation where you're going to have to choose something difficult, and you're like, man, I don't know if I have the strength to do this, but then there's that one other person that's like, hey, if you do it, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And then there's somebody else that says, well, if you guys do it, I'll do it. That's kind of how I think of these guys, because they went together and it could have cost them their lives. I mean, they'd just been taken from their home and brought to a different place, but they stood together as friends against really overt evil, and the Lord blessed them for that.
Right. Yep. Then we see Ruth and Naomi, which we've talked about on this channel before. They were that was actually a mother and daughter-in-law situation. But again, even though they were family, they became very close friends.
Yeah.
And then we see Naomi was the mother-in-law and Ruth was the daughter-in-law. And we see that Ruth had the opportunity to go back to her people when her husband died. And that was really the custom at the time for her to go back and then potentially get married at some point. But going back meant that she would be taken care of. But staying with Naomi meant they were going to live a beggar's life. And she said, I choose to stay with you. And she did. And then the story goes on from there, and it's really cool. Mm-hmm. But we see that relationship was more than just mother-in-law, daughter-in-law, but a very close friendship that really led to eventually being the line of Jesus, in the line of Jesus.
Yeah, that's right. Which brings us to Jesus and his disciples. I mean, that's a great example of friendship. Not one we'll spend a lot of time on right now because we're going to talk about it here in a little bit. But I mean, that's obviously you can't get any more of a better example of a perfect friendship than the way that Jesus treated his disciples.
Right. Then another example is Paul and Timothy and Barnabas. So Paul was given the task of preaching the gospel, and he did that alongside Timothy. Was kind of his understudy, I guess. I would say. And they went and preached the gospel to many different people groups, and they did a lot of traveling and missionary
went to jail together. I mean, there's a lot
they went to some crazy lengths, and they were really persecuted for their faith.
That's right.
But they had a very deep friendship doing that, and we see letters written from Paul to Timothy in the New Testament, and and the friendship or letters written about them and the friendship between the two of them.
That's right, which brings us to a verse in Ecclesiastes written by Solomon. It's chapter 4, verses 9 through 12. It says, "Two are better than one because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who's alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up. Again, if two lie together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one who's alone, two will withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken." This is something that is quoted a lot at weddings, which is great. I mean, it certainly would apply to that. But this is not a wedding verse. This is a friendship verse. This is talking about, Solomon, the wisest man ever, is making a comment here that isolation and being alone is tragic. And not only is it tragic, it can be dangerous because it leaves you open to attacks that if you had your people, your friends around there with you to help you withstand that, you'd be in a better position.
Right.
So it's good. All right, babe. So the relationship pyramids. So we've talked a little bit about the Bible. And again, we're talking first about teaching friendship, right? These are the things that we want to teach our children, right? We want to teach them that friendship's in the Bible, and here's some examples of where they can find that.
Right, exactly.
But practically too, kids look at friendship maybe a little bit differently than adults do. And I posted up on our Facebook page a couple of different graphics that I think kind of describe what friendship is. And so I wanted to talk just a little bit about those two pyramids. So the first one's kind of the black and white with the red top, and I'm going to throw it up here on the screen so that everybody can see it. Although I know the writing's small, sorry about that. But basically it says that there are 5 levels of friendship, starting at strangers down at the bottom, then acquaintance, then casual friend, close friend, and intimate friend. And I read through that. As I read through these two graphics, that one kind of resonated with me. I mean, there are people that are strangers, right? People that I don't know, that you might see around. You might be cordial to them. But I thought about this, and I was thinking about this with regards to our kids. And, as I think about teaching friendship, I want to avoid that coming to a place where my kids are going, "Man, you are so out of touch." And so I was thinking about, well, how does this pyramid relate to kids? And what I was really sticking on was the stranger piece of it, that bottom piece. Because, look, I'm willing to admit maybe that our kids are a little more just embrace anybody off the street than maybe some others are. But when we talk to, you think of like kids that are high school age or junior high age, and it's like they've never met a stranger, right? I mean, it's just friends that I haven't become friends with yet. And so I was thinking about that. I was kind of looking through a couple of the other graphics that were on this page that I was researching, and I found this second picture that I'm going to put up here, which is called the Friendship Pyramid, P-E-E-R, Pyramid, by this Garcia. Let's see what her name is. Garcia Winner, and I don't know anything about him. So I don't know if that's a good person or bad person or whatever. I'm just taking this on the fruits of what it is, this picture. But at the bottom level, he has friendly greetings, people that you would greet with a friendly greeting, which I thought, okay, well, even for me, like when we're out on a walk as a family and I see people around the neighborhood, I don't know them. They're strangers to me, but we'll say hi to them, give them a friendly greeting. And then second level's acquaintance, and then possible friendship, and then evolving friendship, kind of that port where friendship's growing, bonded friend, and close friend. I was thinking about this, and I was reading what some of the people who have studied this were commenting on, and they were saying a disconnect between adults and children is that as adults, if we look at this friendship pyramid, we have generally lots of people that we know that fall into levels 3 and then mainly 2 and 1. Right? We have a lot of people that we know, right? People at church where you wave at people, you say hi, but you don't really know them. And, they're acquaintances, which their definition here of acquaintance is someone that you talk to because they're in the same place. Yeah. I mean, tell me that doesn't describe a ton of adult relationships. Oh, sure. They're work people. They're church people. They're the other parents on my kid's baseball team. That whatever. Where it's they're not strangers to you. So there's somewhere in that, like, yeah, I say hi to them, but I don't really know anything about them. Or, yeah, we kind of hang out because we're both here doing this common thing. Mm-hmm. And so they were saying that adults usually have a large number of people because as adults we get around more than our kids do, right? Because we're mobile and we have all these things that take us here, there, and everywhere. But we have less people at the top to our detriment as adults, because those top levels, close friend and bonded friend, are really the ones where friendship becomes what we see in the Bible as friendship.
Yeah.
Intimate, encouraging of each other in our lives and provision and sacrifice for each other. Whereas the disconnect comes in because our children have less number of people that they would say they know, but they're generally higher on that pyramid, and they move up the pyramid faster. So for example, that person that your son or daughter waves to one time between first and second hour every day at high school, if you ask them, I'll bet they would say, like, yeah, we're friends. I mean, and what they mean is we don't dislike each other.
Yeah.
Right? It's not necessarily that they're friends. It's just they friendly greet each other. Mm-hmm. But to a young person, to an adult, we're like, that means nothing to me. Mm-hmm. For a younger person, that means more to them. And I think that's where we need to be careful as we're teaching our kids about friendship, to help them understand what we're talking about. And I don't mean to set them straight with what they're thinking. I don't mean, hey, that person you see between first and second hour, that ain't your friend. Right? I mean, we don't need to be like that. But I do think we can help to have a common definition. Like, all right, Jackson, Ryan, Riker, our kids, as we're talking about friendship, here's what we're talking about.
Here's what I mean.
These top couple levels where you have friends that you have made a conscious decision, I want to pursue friendship with this person. Mm-hmm. Or I'm in this friendship and, man, I want to be best friends with this person. That's what we're talking about when we talk about friendship. I think it helps us as parents and kids to realize, okay, we might define friendship a little bit differently, but when we're talking about what it means to be a good friend and to choose good friends, here's what we're talking about.
Yep.
Right? Because sometimes when we tell our kids, your friends really need to believe as you believe and be able to encourage you, like as Christians, encourage you in your faith. I think what our friends hear is, I have no idea if what our kids hear is that person I talked to between first and second hour, I have no idea if they're a Christian or not, and that's weird that I can't talk to them. Well, of course, as a parent, that's not what you're talking about, right? We're talking about those people you really allow to have influence in your life. But I think that can be missed with our kids. And so to really be explicit about, here's what we're talking about when we talk about close friendship, and all the rest of it, that's great. And know lots of people. Have lots of people that you say hi to and that you're kind. Be kind to everybody. But those people you really allow close to you, let's narrow down what it is you're looking for when we talk about that and what you want to be.
Yeah. The information on that is really great. That peer amid.
Right. Right. So second thing, that's teaching friendship. Second is training for friendship. So I just kind of, as I was thinking about this, put together a definition for our conversation of what a friend is. And certainly, please disagree with this if you see part of this you don't like. But I put a unique friendship, I like to use the word in the definition. A unique relationship between two people that's based on intentional focus on mutual intimacy and growth. So it's a unique relationship. There are lots of other kinds of relationships. This is a unique one that is based on intentional focus. We both want to be friends with each other, and we're going to focus on growing closer together as friends and growing each other separately as people because of our friendship.
Right.
Proverbs 27:9 says, "Oil and perfume make the heart glad, and the sweetness of a friend comes from his earnest counsel." Right? It's that friendship that grows us.
Yeah. So then we also are talking about friendship is a position of authority in our life, and that's a big thing. I think as adults thinking about our close friends, they really do have authority in our lives, and we need to be careful in guarding that.
Yep.
So Proverbs 27:17 says, "Iron sharpens iron, and one man sharpens another."
Yep.
And then 1 Corinthians 15:33, "Do not be deceived. Bad company ruins good morals."
Man.
Ty Schenzel used to say, "Show me your friends, I'll show you your future," and
That's
it is
right.
so true.
That's right.
Particularly, I think, in the lives of children, because they're so much more impressionable.
Yeah, although I would say at least, I mean, if it's less so as an adult, it's
And maybe
splitting
it's not.
hairs.
Maybe it's not less so, but I think about that more maybe when I think of kids.
Yeah, I will tell you, this position of authority, I think that's the thing that scares us as parents. Because we see our kids' friends and we immediately want to kind of be overly judgmental because we recognize this.
Yes.
At least that can be the temptation for me.
Right.
As you have this kid and he seems like he has a good family and seems like he's a decent kid, but he just gave me a weird look. Is my 10-year-old planning a kegger or what's going on here? Right? I mean, we can go down this road that's based on that idea that bad company ruins good morals.
Yep. And then Proverbs 22:24-25 says, "Make no friendship with a man given to anger, nor with a wrathful man, lest you learn his ways and entangle yourself in a snare," which is talking about what we just said.
Right.
Being careful who our friends are. So,
that's right.
So, friendship is this position of authority that we give to people in our lives, and talking with our kids about, let's be careful who we're giving that to.
Right, and let's be cognizant of who's giving that to us so that we can intentionally take advantage of that position of authority in their lives.
Yep.
So talking about training for friendship, first thing is friendship is a position of authority in our lives. We want to make sure our children understand that. Second is that friendship is time consuming, right? I mean, that's what it is, and that's okay. But I think it's good for in the right here, right now society, which everybody right now is a little bit that way. And kids were like the originators of that. So if all of society is that way, imagine, our kids, they think like, hey, I want friends, but I want it to happen right now. And, this is also something we notice tragically with people where they just want to just hang out and then someone's going to be my friend. Right? We want to just, hey, we've been going to church for 2 years and nobody wants to be our friend. Well, have you taken time to pursue anyone else? Well, no, we keep waiting for somebody to invite us over. Well, that's not how friendship works, right? We want to make sure our children understand friendship is time consuming and we have to intentionally choose to put in the time with those people that we want to become friends with. And that starts, of course, with people that we might just have met as acquaintances. And so you kind of get to know them a little bit better. And it might be that some of those folks, you're like, you know what, we're not ever going to have that really close, intimate friendship, but that's okay.
Yep. That kind of goes into the next point, which is a friendship is sacrifice. So we should be giving of ourselves to our friends. And when we have little kids, that comes in to play when, they're playing together. The friend wants to play one thing and your kid wants to play another thing. And we can say, you know what, let's prefer our friend and what they want to do. And let's do that. And then maybe in 15 or 20 minutes, you can do the other thing. But let's prefer our friend.
That's right.
So we can start teaching our kids that friendship is sacrifice at young ages. And then that grows as you get older. There's lots of ways that we sacrifice for our friends as adults. That may be, spending time with them when you're in just a busy season and it's hard to find time, but it's important to grow those friendships. It may be having them over and feeding them a meal, sacrificing your time to give them a meal.
Sure.
Friendship is a lot of sacrifice. And it should be going both ways too. It should be, we're sacrificing for our friends, but probably those friends that aren't sacrificing for us aren't going to last either, because it should be a two-way street.
Sure. That's good. Then the last one is friendships can be for a season or they can be for life. Again, we're talking about things we want to be teaching our children. And even at a young age, our kids can understand sacrifice. They can understand something taking some time. They can understand that, hey, my friends are people that can make me do stuff, right? That position of authority in our lives. Our friends influence us. But the last thing that is those friendships, some are forever, right? There are a lot of people that have friends that were friends of theirs when they were way back.
Yeah, we've got some of those.
You and I met each other when we were in only the third grade. Now, we weren't close friends for most of that time between third grade and the time we really started dating in college. But we knew each other, right? I mean, the point is you can have friendships that can be for a season, and then sometimes your friendships you can have friends that are friends for life, and then sometimes you have friends that are just friends for a season. And that's okay.
Right.
I mean, we don't want it to be a friend for a season because there's an explosion in the friendship that ends it, of course.
Because I want something from you for a season, that kind of thing. Right.
But certainly there are times when we have friends just for a certain portion of our lives. And, why even bring this up as a point? Why train our kids in this? Well, because it helps to build that intentionality and urgency with our kids that, you know what, this friend you're really close with, he or she might only be in your life for a short amount of time. They might move, they might, go to a different school, whatever the case might be, where, you're just not as close of friends anymore. So let's make the most of this time that we have right now with this friend.
That's great. Okay, so we talked about what is a friend, and now we're going to move into circles of friendships, which we've talked about on Marriage Monday too, but there's what we call circles of friendship. So
this is a teaching tool for your kids, the circle idea.
To teach them this, and we've had quite a few conversations with Jackson about this. But the first point in that is that full friendship is not for everyone that we know, but it's critically important. So that means that friendship where you're closer, that closer than a brother type friendship, you're sharing everything with them. It's a very deep friendship. Having this teaching our kids this understanding of that's not for everybody, and that's a good thing. We want close friends that we're being very transparent with, but we have to be careful who those are that we're allowing into our lives that closely. Yeah. And not everybody can be that way. We can have some friends that are more acquaintances that we get together with sometimes, some that are a little bit closer that we enjoy being with more frequently, and some that are really very close and are holding us accountable, and vice versa, and all that sort of thing. So Proverbs 18:1 says, whoever isolates himself seeks his own desire. He breaks out against all sound judgment. So again, teaching our kids that isolation in any period of your life is not a good thing, and the Bible talks about that leads to destruction.
Right.
And then Proverbs 18:24 says, a man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. So we can have those friends, like I was saying, we can have those friends that are closer than your brother, that you're choosing to have an authority piece in your life, and who really you're able to be transparent with.
Yeah, I found it really interesting. Those two verses are both from Proverbs 18. Mm-hmm. The first one you read is the first verse. The second one you read is the last verse. Mm-hmm. And so the first verse starts with, don't isolate yourself because it's dangerous, right? Because at the end of the day, if it's just you, the voice that always sounds like a good idea is you. Mm-hmm. And so, having a multitude of counsel, Proverbs talks about, to help when we have those ideas when someone else goes,
no.
That's a really dumb idea.
Right.
If you're the only one and you're all alone, there's danger there because your idea is always going to seem like a good idea, even when it's not a good idea.
Right.
And then the second verse, here's the thing I love about that. So isolating, bad. But then the first part of the last verse of Proverbs 18, that 24 says, a man of many companions may come to ruin. Mm-hmm. So there we're not talking about someone that's isolated. We're talking about someone that has tons of people that they sort of are acquaintances with.
Right.
Right? But there's a friend who sticks closer than a brother, right? You can have all sorts of people in your life and still come to ruin.
Yeah, I kind of equate that to the phrase jack of all trade, master of none.
Okay.
Friend of all, but none that are close. There's none of that. There's nothing beyond just a general friendship.
Right. And part of the come to ruin, we've all heard those stories of those people, young people that created, I'm trying to remember what the story was. If it was the guy that originally created Minecraft, the video game, but he had young guy, had everything, right? Mm-hmm. He came into this, Microsoft bought it out for billions of dollars, and, he had all the money that he could ever want. And I remember years ago, probably a decade plus ago, seeing a tweet from him, if this is the guy that I'm thinking of. I might have the Minecraft part wrong, but a tweet where he was offering to pay people to come hang out with him at his mansion because he knew tons of people, right, from being a part of this, but he had no friends.
Right. Wow.
It was just a bunch of people that just sort of know about him.
Crazy.
Tragic. Yep, that's coming to ruin, even if it's just mentally. Which leads into the next point, which is a little bit counter to what we were just talking about, but acquaintances are cool too, right? Like, we don't want to be isolated. We don't want to have only acquaintances with no close, intimate friendship, but we never want our children to feel like, hey, you either are all in with somebody or they're out, right? I mean, we want our kids to have, these circles, which Andrea is going to talk about here in just a second. But the point is, you have a whole huge circle of people that you know, and then within that circle, there are smaller circles as you get closer and closer to people that you're really intimate with. And every one of those circles should have someone in it.
Right.
Right? I mean, it shouldn't just be, oh, here's my close friends, and anybody who's not super tight with me and can't hang out with me all the time, I don't even want to talk to you. Right? But at the same time, it's not just, man, I don't really know. I say hi to lots of people, but nobody really knows who I am.
Yeah, that's
right.
dangerous.
We need those concentric circles, but having acquaintances are great. Right. Just recognizing that, hey, this is not somebody I'm super close with, and you know what? As our kids mature, we can help them to understand there are certain people that you might desire to be closer to, but that you choose to keep them at that acquaintance level for one reason or another, right? It could be that you recognize, hey, this is a cool person. I really like hanging out with them, but they're into some stuff that I know if I really let them into my inner circle, it's gonna draw me astray from the goals that I have for my life.
Right.
And because of that, I'm gonna keep them at the acquaintance level, even though I'd really like to have a closer relationship with them. That's the kind of maturity, this training we're talking about, where we want to be able to get our kids to make that decision for themselves.
Yep. So let's talk real quick about those circles of friendship. So we talk about those as being like 3 circles. There's a big one on the outside that's more like your acquaintances, people that you kind of know, maybe you'll hang out with in groups, some that know you generally but probably don't know much depth about you, and vice versa. And that's great. It's great to have those, like Nathan was just saying, it's great to have those kinds of people.
Yep.
And then there's a circle that's smaller and closer to you that are people that you see more frequently, that you share more life with, that you're probably sharing some intimate details with, but maybe not everything with. Maybe you're sharing some intimate facts, but not your feelings that go along with it. It's just those people that are not on quite the like close inner circle, but you love hanging out with them and you're good friends with them.
Yep.
And then there's that smaller inner circle that's very close to you that you're willing to be really raw with. You're willing to allow them to do that iron sharpens iron. You're willing to allow them to speak into your life, have some authority in your life. You've also got that authority in their life and speaking into their life. You're willing to be very open and honest with them. And that circle is probably going to be really small because you can't be that raw with everybody.
Right.
And you
might only be 1 or 2 people.
Right. Yeah, I've got a couple really great friends that are super close to me that know me very well, but it's just a couple.
Right.
So, and that's a great thing to have those. And teaching our kids about kind of those circles of friendship. Not everybody has to be super close. Not everybody has to be acquaintances. We have some varying degrees within that.
Yep.
But we have to be careful about who those friends are.
Yeah.
The ones that you're choosing to have as those really the closest friends. You just have to be careful. I mean, Proverbs talks about that they can bring you to ruin.
Right.
So we want to be careful that we're guarding our heart and we're guarding our future and our lives with the people that we allow really close to us.
Yeah, and of course...
And in our circles.
Yeah, that's right. And using that lingo with our kids, it creates a common language that we can use with our kids so that as they're making friends, even at a young age, you can ask them, what circle does this person fall in, right? I mean, is this someone that you feel like you really want to be close with? And that matters for something we're going to talk about here in a minute when it comes to investing in friendship. But before we talk about that, really the operative characteristic when it comes to training our kids about friendship is to teach intentionality. Every single one of these things requires us to be intentional when we think about friendships. It's not going to just happen. Right? We need to be intentional about pouring into those friendships. So when we're training our kids in all things, let's be teaching them about being intentional.
Mm-hmm. So where's the greatest place to start teaching our kids about how to be a good friend? With their siblings.
Yes.
So
yes, that's right.
Sibling relationships are a necessary place to begin this training. And certainly sibling relationships can also be a lot of conflict as well because they're with each other a lot of times. But we teach our kids that they have built-in friends. They have built-in best friends, and they're the people that live in this house.
Right.
And so we are teaching them how to be friends with their siblings and how to be intentional, how to allow for some constructive criticism, how to allow for preferring the other person, and really teaching them to be great friends to each other and seeing great friendship in the other person too.
Right.
So I oftentimes tell my kids kind of in a joking manner when they talk about best friends, like, oh, so-and-so is my best friend. I'm like, no, your best friends are the people who live in this house, but I want my kids to think of their siblings as their friends too.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great place to practice as we're training our kids in what it means to be a good friend.
Yep.
Talking about that with their siblings. And I talk about this with Jackson all the time when it talks to specific kinds of friendships that he will want to engage in when he's a little bit older with regards to girls. He talks about what dating might be like someday. He's 10, so he doesn't have a huge desire for that yet, but he talks about it. And I will tell him that I'm not allowed. I mean, that's just never happening until I see him treating his sister with all these things that we just talked about. Because if you can't, to be the same with friends, right? If you can't treat your siblings, your sister and brothers, the way that you ought to be with regards to being a good friend, then why would I let you corrupt some poor other person's child? So, practicing here with our own siblings, important place to start.
Yep.
So we had teaching our kids about friendship, training our kids about friendship. Now we're going to talk about choosing friendship. So we need to help our kids think about what values they desire in a friend. And, the thing I always like to say about this is otherwise, if they're not clearly defining, here's what I'm looking for in friends, then when they start to get lonely and desire that companionship, then good enough will be good enough. And that's tragic because there's a lot of people out there that probably are not good friendship material, but you hang out with them and allow them to have influence in your life because you're lonely.
Yep.
So we need to help our kids think about what values they desire in a friend.
Right. Yep. And then we need to also model both being a good friend and choosing good friends for our children. So let's talk with them about how we treat our friends and how we choose our friends. Again, Jackson's really the example here because he's the one who's in school and has got lots of friends. But he'll spend some time with friends and we'll talk to him about how was that,
What did you like about that person?
Yeah, we talk about why you like them as your friend, how are they a great friend, all that sort of thing, and what to look for. And then he's had some people that he's hung out with that have hurt his feelings, and we talk about forgiveness, and sometimes that just happens.
Sure.
But if that's happening over and over again, a lot of hurt there, a lot of things that are happening that are not indicators of good friendship. We talk to him about, we still want to be kind with that person and loving that person, but maybe they just need to not be a very close friend.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's a great time to really, when they're younger, to really be teaching them how to choose friends and talk about those circles and maybe where to place those people in those circles.
Yep. Yeah. And to model that with our kids. I mean, they're they're going to do as we do. So, if we're not modeling, and by that I mean allow your kids to know your friends, right? Ask these same questions about your friends with each other, with your spouse. Are we choosing good friends? Are we being good friends? And use those examples of friendship, when you talk to your kids, right? And talk to them openly about friendship, even at a young age. I think we undervalue how much our children understand, even at a young age, about the world around them. And, so talking to our friends about what it means to be a good friend, what they're looking for in friends, the friends that they have, what circle do they fall in, and what are things that are preventing you from being better friends with someone if that's what your children desire. I mean, using these terms is key, because we're training our kids with a skill that they're really going to need for the rest of their life, which is evaluating those around and deciding, who do I really let have influence in my life, and who's allowing me to have influence in their life? How can I make the most of that?
Right. Yeah, so then the last part of choosing friendship is just helping our kids to choose friendship, but also giving them a great understanding that friendship is sacrifice.
Yeah.
And so we're boiling it all down to a characteristic of being willing to sacrifice for your friends and looking for that in their friends too.
That's right.
Yep.
That's
All
right.
right, so let's talk next about investing in friendship.
Yeah, key.
So
this is really where your role as a parent starts really shining.
Yep. This is the biggest role we play in our children's relationship is helping them to invest in their friendships.
Yep. And investing ourselves.
Yes.
In our friendships.
Right.
I mean, when our kids have friends, and I would highly encourage you, have conversation as spouses now about how are we going to entice our children and their friends to be in our sphere of influence as parents. And that may come across as controlling. I genuinely don't mean it to. I want my sons and daughter to be having their friends over here because I genuinely want to be able to invest in that friendship myself. Right? I want to be able to get to know their friends in the hope that I can speak life and encouragement and truth into their friends. Yeah. And that really requires moral authority. Moral authority is this idea from a book that Andy Stanley wrote called Visioneering. And it's the idea that it's kind of the credibility bank that we have with everyone we meet. It's the authority that we have in their life to speak to issues of morality within their life, to encourage them, to speak to them at a deeper, more intimate level. And so we, as parents of children who have friends, need to be intentional about speaking into that. And that takes time, right? Taking our time to be around when our kids have their friends over. Taking time to create spaces in our home where our kids can be comfortable with their friends and maybe be segregated from some of the other house stuff that's going on, but not be shut in somebody's bedroom. Where they can be a part, your kids' friends can be a part of your family, not just a part of your child's life.
Yeah.
Effort. I mean, for a lot of the same reasons as time, it takes effort to think about these things. It takes effort to engage in our children's friends' lives, right? I mean, raising little kids is difficult. And sometimes, if we're honest, it can feel good that, like, great, now our kids are going to go play with their friends for a while.
Yeah.
But man, we need to take the effort to have them in our home and create those opportunities to be able to speak truth into their lives. The fun stuff, right? Creating a home that is inviting for your friends. That means, you might be a family that doesn't do pop, but maybe you should have a fridge like in the basement that's stocked with pop, right? To get kids, look, this isn't going to maybe bring your college son and their buddies to your house, but for younger people,
bring college kids.
That's right,
and
food
high school kids.
And pop, have it available, right? The snacky stuff where people want to come over and just crash and hang out, right? And then while they're doing that, you can be there to just chill, right? I mean, I'm not talking about hijacking your friend hanging out with their friends. I'm talking about small things.
Nathan's
right?
really good.
Knowing enough to know, like, their name, a couple of things about them, that in the few minutes where they walk from your front door to the pantry to the basement, you can have a short conversation with them.
Well, and Nathan's really great about, he'll play baseball with a pickup game of baseball with Jackson and his friends, or a board game, or whatever, and they love it. At this age, 10, they love it, and that's a huge blessing, and Nathan's really great at that.
Yeah, and get at them while they're young.
Yes.
Because if you have, it's so much easier to establish moral authority in the life of a young person than it is a teenager.
Sure.
So start when your kids are young with those friends.
Right.
And finally, the not so fun stuff. Right. This is the sacrifice piece, the self-sacrifice piece. Being willing to run your son or daughter and their friends around a little bit in the car before they can drive, right? Making sure to be a part of, if your son or daughter has a friend who plays a sport, get the schedule and go with your son or daughter to see a couple of their games, right? Investing in your friends, your children's friends' lives is critical for building up that moral authority.
Right. It is. Yep. So then the operative characteristic of all of this that it boils down to is that as a parent, it requires sacrifice.
Right.
So like Nathan was saying, it's when we think of kids and they get to be the age where they can go off and do things with their friends, we think, oh, it's so nice to have that freedom. But that's great sometimes for sure. But also sacrificing our time with our kids and their friends to really invest in them and be intentional to help our kids cultivate friendships and help them to recognize what great friendships are and maybe not so great friendships. And it takes a sacrifice of our time and energy.
Yeah.
But it's so important.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. That's right. So the last thing we want to talk about then is reflecting on friendship. This can be a really tricky one because there's really two pieces of this. The one we're going to focus on initially is how am I as a friend, right? And that really it kind of takes friends to be able to even ask this question, because sometimes we think, man, I'm a great friend. I'm the best friend. And, meanwhile, there are people around you that are like, does he not see that he just talks all the time and doesn't ever let other people talk? Or he only wants to hang out with people that want to do what he wants to do. We can have those blind spots as friends. And so, it takes a considerable amount of introspection to be able to ask this question. But the reflecting on friendship's really two pieces, right? How am I acting as a friend, and being honest with yourself, pursuing other generally older folks in your life that can look at you, and for our children, that's us as parents, to be able to sit down with them lovingly and say, hey, I noticed when you had your friend over, you just talked constantly. Did you ever think about maybe asking them what's going on in your life, right? Particularly for young children, this can be a difficult thing because it's natural, right? It's me, right? I'm here I am.
Yep.
And so helping our kids to think about that. And the first piece, how am I as a friend? Second piece, how am I being treated by my friends? We all have seen those tragic situations where someone is just hopelessly attached to a friend that we all recognize treats them like crap. And it's sad. And, it can be born out of a ton of different motivations, low self-esteem or, some sort of painful, traumatic situation in the past. Sometimes it's just, I'm lonely and this person's here. But man, really taking inventory of our friends and where they fall in those circles is really important. And it took you and I a long time to realize this. I mean, we had some friends that had proven themselves to be flaky friends, right? Where we'd set something up with them, and just every time, the day of or a few minutes before, in some case, they'd call and cancel. And, for us who didn't get a ton of time to hang out with other adults, it could just really wreck us. And we had to come to a place evaluating our friendships where we went, you know what? I still want to know that person, and if we get a chance to hang out, great. But I'm no longer giving them that kind of authority in my life where it wrecks me if they don't want to hang out with me, because they've proven that that's who they are. It's not a priority to them.
Right.
And it wasn't vindictive, right? It's just as we're thinking about those circles, that person's moved themselves out. of maybe one of those inner circles because they've just shown me that that's not valuable to them. So that's kind of the thing we're talking about, and talking about that with our kids, helping them to see, hey, this person that's continually hurting your feelings, let's think about not giving them that kind of authority in your life. Doesn't mean we don't be kind to them, that we're not, continue to say hi to them and hang out with them from time to time, but let's not give them that kind of authority in our life that it wrecks us when they treat us the way they've proven they like to treat their friends.
Yep. Great. So then the operative characteristic for reflecting on friendship here is that you and your children just need to be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
Be honest with, am I being a good friend? Am I choosing good friends?
Yeah.
How are the friends that I do have? Are they people that are life for me, or are they bringing me down? Just being willing to be honest and take a good look at that. I mean, Nathan and I had, like he was saying, we had definitely had a period of time in our life where we looked at ourselves and said, we're so messed up. We don't have friends because
who the heck would want to be friends with us?
Nobody wants to be friends with us because we have so many issues.
Yeah.
And that was really hard to come to, but we also knew that there was a lot of work to do, and by the grace of God, He did a lot of work in our lives, and that was a huge blessing to then have friends after that we feel like they're great friends and are people who we probably never would have been friends with had we just chosen to keep sitting in our muck. So
right. That's right.
Yeah. So that's
right.
it.
Yeah. So I mean, the main things are start young, right, as young as you can with your kids, talking about friendship, building this common language, and then don't stop.
Yep. Right.
Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you found this insightful. If you've found tricks when you talk to your kids about friends, or if you have insights on, maybe your children are older and how this looks when your kids are older, revisiting this, love to have you tell us about that. Put that in the comments below, or hop over to our Facebook page. That's Marriage by Design Podcast, and let us know your thoughts.
We'd love it.
Until then, guys, thanks so much for joining us. Have a happy Friday. Have a great weekend. Hopefully we will see you on Sunday evening for Sunday Night Live on Marriage by Design, and we'll be back at you with more Marriage Monday on Monday. Thanks for joining us, guys, and remember, God is for your family.
Hey, thanks for joining us on Marriage by Design. If you were impacted by this video, like it by hitting the thumbs up below. Also, don't forget to subscribe, and once you subscribe, hit the bell icon so you can be notified when new episodes release.
Excellent. Also, one of the huge pillars of our show is interactivity between us and you. So we would love you to comment down in the comments below if you have thoughts about this video, or if you have questions or other things you'd like to see considered in the future. In addition, if you'd like, you can email us. That's marriagebydesignpodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram @marriagebydesignpodcast, or you can find us on Facebook by searching Marriage by Design Podcast. Finally, if you want to, you can tweet at us. We do have a Twitter account that is @MarriageXDesign. Thanks, and have a great day.